I'll put it back on.
Hey everyone, welcome to another installment from Pro Engineering. In this episode, let me just, there we go. In this episode, we are going to solve a minor inconvenience, we'll call it, of the Trailfinder 2 Mini. I didn't mean for the body to fall off, but the body has been known on occasion to fall off of this car. This is an interesting vehicle because I think cosmetically, I'm not going to put it back on here, but I think cosmetically the Trailfinder 2 Mini is one of the absolute prettiest and most scale looking RC cars out there. The fact that it's so tiny, I mean, it can sit on your shelf and people would, not think twice about it being a model car. However, as much as I have driven this car, the body it's just annoying. It just constantly falls off. So we are going to fix this. We're going to fix it not using Velcro, not using magnets. We're going to leverage existing geometry on the vehicle as well as on the chassis to make the body a permanent fixture on the chassis when you want it there and have it readily off the vehicle when you need to access things within the chassis. This is my test mule. And I can thank my friend Dustin for lending me the vehicle. This is the basic premise. I didn't want to use body pins. I didn't want to use anything, that would fall off the car. It is tiny, so having little magnets and little pins and all that, I thought would just be aggravating. So what I did is I developed a system that has these 4 little springs here. You can see there's 2 there and 2 there. Under the car, you have the factory interior, and then you've got this mounting feature. What we're looking at in terms of printing is a SLA, ABS-like resin for these springs. This is a SLS nylon print. Under the car, again, SLA, ABS-like resin. And the way that it works is you basically just line these 2 up, give it a bit of a squeeze, like so. And you should hear a little click. I didn't hear a click. Normally there's a click. Anyway. We could go on like that for a while, but it's not going to fall off. To remove it, you take your sausage fingers here and you just squeeze there, flip it over, give it a squeeze there, and the vehicle body is off the car. Again, it's all pretty straightforward. More importantly, when the body is on, it sits exactly as it would have when the vehicle originally had the regular Velcro. Now you can see here that the front of the chassis is hitting the lower valance or the lower apron, whatever you want to call it. So that is fundamentally an issue with this as well. So you just have to pull this back, because even on the factory vehicle, the front frame rails should be tucked just under the valance. So that is exactly how it's going to sit. Exactly, again, as it would have if the vehicle was in the box. So if you have the RC4 drive rear bumper, again, everything's going to fit exactly as it would. And you can see back here that there's just a little clearance. Now, what I did is I took off, it's here somewhere, I took off this little bracket because it doesn't need it. But the fact of the matter is that it does still flex back here because, well, it's kind of a long frame rail at the back. So if you want to leave it there just as kind of a spacer, totally doable, but it doesn't need to be there. Let's install this because my truck here is tired of falling apart. Once the SLS parts were painted, you can see how they look. They've got a little bit of a, undercarriage floor pan look to them. Now, I couldn't quite copy the actual Toyotas because there's features in here that are required to fit on the Trailfinder 2 Mini chassis. just so you can see that this is how these springs came off the SLA printer. So we'll just pry these guys off. Now there's enough clearance straight off the bed for these to just slide right on in there. If these were injection molded in ABS plastic, you can see that there's a little lead-in, a little chamfer right there, which will kind of correspond to this. They go in this way here. The problem is, like, even though they should just push in, there's a good amount of, it's hard to say, but there's a good amount of friction on this surface here. So to me, they don't really behave like an injection molded part will, even though the design is conducive to that, which is why I like to squeeze the pins as I'm dropping it in place, because it stays in place better there. Perhaps one day this will be injection molded, and that's going to completely change everything. All right, so we need 2 of these springs for each side, and you can see that they have an orientation, okay? The half moon goes up like that. You're going to slide it in, lift it over that little rectangular boss there. The same on the other side, and we'll put a screw in here in a second. I'll tell you exactly what screw that is, and you can kind of see again how this works. Okay, nothing too crazy. In order to assemble these onto the vehicle, as well as to retain these 2 clips over here, you're going to need some M 1.6 by 0.35 thread pitch. Here's the kicker though. The screws on this chassis, and these holes here in particular, are not M 1.6 by 0.35. They are M 1.6 by 0.2. I got this information from RC4 Drive. However, good luck finding that thread pitch. I cannot find it anywhere. I've checked websites that deal with micro screws. I've checked McMaster. I've checked Granger. You name it. If you can find them, fantastic. I could not, so I bought this here baggie of, I think, 6 millimeter. I think they're 6 millimeter long. Again, M 1.6 by 0.35 millimeter screws. And I'm going to use this here tap to retap those holes and get it to fit. Is that ideal? Absolutely not. Can you just go ahead and thread them on in there? Sure, give it a shot. But then don't tell your buddy that you broke off 2, not 1, but 2 screws in the chassis. I'm posting this on the internet, aren't I? I did it right here, at least. Okay. He'll never know. Prior to installing both of these, including the little springs here, you're going to want to take a pin vise and clear out any residual material from these holes. Now, I am actually going to enlarge the perimeter of these just to make them a little bit stronger, because I actually broke one, and I want to make sure that these are a little bit more robust. They're going to be fine once they're on the vehicle. It's the actual cleaning that broke the other one. So yeah, we'll make them bigger. I used a 1.6 millimeter pin vise because I happen to have one, but you do want to make sure that these are clean, because these are going to be through holes, not tapped holes. Any hole on this vehicle you're going to want to ensure is fully clean, because we're dealing with a very small car with very small hardware, and it just so happens that all of the related mating features are also very small. Down here, you're going to see that there's, again, more holes. You'll want to use something a little bit smaller down here, because these actually are tapped holes. So I would clear them out with like a 1.2 or so pin vise. These are plenty strong, and this is where you're going to have the rock sliders if you want them. A little side note with SLS parts, the nylon, you can see there's some residual nylon in there. Again, you want to make sure that these are clean, because if they're not, the system's just not going to work very well. So that's nice and clean. So it's good to use a bit of an air compressor. Or we'll take our 1.6 millimeter machine screw. It's not ideal to tap into the plastic, but it's, again, it was difficult for me to even locate this screw. Make sure that it's nice and retaining everything, and that there's full motion. You want to ensure that this motion is smooth now, because if it isn't, then your body may potentially be permanently on here. Okay, we don't need it too tight. There we go. And we're going to fix the hole that we screwed up earlier. You'll want to tap this hole here and this hole here. All right, the installation is pretty straightforward. There's this little flange that hooks onto the front of the chassis like that. And then you're going to line up, how does it go? Okay. The two screws that hold the transmission on, there's little notches for them. You can kind of see that. So they'll kind of help keep it in place. But then basically the two screws you tapped, you'll just want to run the screw right in there and you're good to go. When you screw these down, don't torque them too much. I mean, this is, what is this chassis? 2.5 millimeters thick. It's very, very thin. So once they are nice and snug, they're good to go. If you're worried about them backing out, just a dab, a thread lock. Next, we're going to install the rock sliders. Now, you don't need to put these on, but what the heck, I might as well. The CAD for these, if you do go with MyMiniFactory, does have these parts attached. So I went ahead and left them together when I was painting them. And again, you'll want to make sure that these holes are nice and clear. You want this to be a through hole. To install these, a little bit hard to see, but there is one way that has a little boss on top and one way that doesn't. This is up. And the mount toward the front, the mount that's all the way to the side is the front, and the one that hangs off here with this mount there is the rear. Now, it is important to note that I designed these sliders here based on the car's factory tires. So if you do have a larger tire or even a larger wheel, there is the distinct possibility that they could come into contact. So just a little heads up there. But that's basically what we've got. Now, I've installed this already, but I'm going to go ahead and show you on mine how to... Oh, crap. All right, now that I in no way had to remove a bunch of stuff that I glued down, what we're going to do is take out that screw, this one over here, and that one buried over there. You're not going to have to pull out this center screw because on the production one, there'll be a little notch for that here. This doesn't have it because I forgot. My God, why do I do this to myself? Okay, so all of this will tuck and seat very nicely around the entire seat bucket. To hold it down, you're actually going to use the screws that you took out of the seat initially. You are going to have enough engagement of the self-tapping threads, but don't go too crazy on torquing it down. It really doesn't need to be all that aggressively installed. And when it stops, it stops. Now, as I did not just spend the last 15 minutes looking for the last screw, which I totally did not drop on black carpet, it's in. We can finally take a look at how the body looks with the sliders in here. Okay, so that'll just drop straight on over it like I showed earlier. Again, you want to get your little, or in my case, large fingers in there. Squeeze them all down. Are we in? I think we're in. We're totally not in. Oh, we are. Sorry, we are in. I just realized that this thing has to get tucked out of the way. And there we go. Cool. Those look good. Nice and parallel. And the body should not part ways with the car unless you want it to. Now, one thing I wanted to mention as well is I have this little plate, and what this is for is to provide you additional room to mount other electronics. So in the case of my Trailfinder 2 Mini, I'm not running the stock receiver ESC combo, so I needed somewhere for the little speed control. To install this, I've been creative. There is a small slot right there. So what you do is you take this plate, slot it in one side, tap this hole right here on both sides. You'll also want to make sure that this is a clearance hole. So we'll just align that in there, drop it in place, pop this in, align that back slot as well. Okay, screw that back in. Front is secure. At the rear, we will take a couple more of our M1.6 screws. Now that we tapped that hole in the frame, we'll just go right on in. So these aren't actually securing this. They're just putting basically the screw through a hole so that it doesn't rock up or down. and that is enough to keep that plate there. Now on this vehicle, which is effectively stock, it's not doing very much, but it is there. So on the left, we have the original style Trailfinder 2 Mini with the factory motor and gearbox. However, on the right, we have the upgraded 130 motor with the different gearbox, and there is no fitment issue. It all drops in. I did notice something a little bit odd. The body, the interior was actually hitting the solder joints on this motor. Now the body sits exactly as it did when it originally was designed, so I don't know what the deal was. To get around this, I just soldered the motor wires under the tabs on the motor. The factory wires were a lot thinner gauge than these, so this is potentially an issue that I'm only having, but I just wanted to mention it. Let's throw some bodies on both trucks. After tidying up some wiring on my truck, I was able to get everything in there, and once again, it's not going anywhere, other than the considerably messy quantity of wiring that my cars tend to have. It's a pretty straightforward installation on both vehicles, whether you've got the upgraded gearbox and motor or the original gearbox and motor. And you do get the cool little rock rails, which again, you don't really need to have installed, but it's a nice option. To me, my only downside is that, you know, your finger size is kind of important. You know, you got to get your fingers in there. You push those clips in, push that clip in, it all comes off. And again, it's all pretty robust. I've done quite a bit of testing on these. You know, I wouldn't beat the thing up all that much. You know, so you just kind of line that back up there, line that back up there. Again, your bumper always in the way. Seems almost as much. Give it a nice press, and it's kind of, we're going to do that for a while, I think. Anyway, my friends, I hope this is a nice upgrade in the life of the Trailfinder 2 Mini. I think this vehicle is a little bit underrated because it does have absolutely sensational looks. For me, I know with my son, my daughter, I tend to try and grab the car and move it, and the body would come and the chassis would not. Now, I've never driven the car with this upgraded this worked earlier. It worked earlier. Is the battery dead? The issue with the truck has been diagnosed as a dead battery, not as a depleted battery, but an absolutely failed, no longer chargeable battery pack. As I don't like having a million different battery packs for different applications, I went ahead and designed an entirely new battery tray to fit these very, very common and very, very reliable FMS lithium polymer batteries. I've got a ton of these. They're very, very inexpensive, and it fits in the factory mounting location. So we'll go ahead and remove the body, and understanding, of course, that unlike the regular Trailfinder 2 Mini, okay, there it goes. I leveraged the original little strap that this thing came with. It's just an elastic band. The thing is, with this battery and with the body, it doesn't move around. This battery does sit about 4 millimeters lower. However, when under full compression, it does not hit the tray. This still has full articulation. You can see here that it basically comes line to line where that upper link is, but that's pretty much where it stops. Okay, there's no lost travel. The original battery will still fit, but I don't know why you'd want to use it, as these are significantly better. So there is our new power supply for this vehicle. Let's throw my magnetic Ampro roll bar on. My friends, thank you all so much for watching. All these components can be found on MyMiniFactory. I will have a brief video showing these aftermarket roll bar, bull bar, back bumper, and wheels as well coming up soon. Everything that we've talked about in this video is currently available on MyMiniFactory as well as Shapeways. There are links in the description. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next time.